The assessments feature is similar to the survey feature, but in this case, you can track assessments and schedule them ahead of time for specific clients. The assessment feature also includes an Assess tab where users can track the assessments being taken in the Assess tab of the client's profile. The assessment feature requires 2 user permissions that you can find in your user profile under administration users. They are the assessor role, which allows you to perform assessments and see the assessment tab, and the assessment administrator role, which allows you to create assessments and see the option under the administration heading. So to create the assessment, you would go under administration and then assessments, and you want to create a new assessment. Click on new assessment, enter a name. The prompt would be a phrase that you would ask the client if they want to take the assessment or not. Introduction would be verbiage that you could use to tell a client a bit more about what the assessment is about. The settings that are available include use section totals and use full assessment totals. Only one or the other could be selected, and this has to do with when running reports. So for example, using full assessment totals is if you wanted the total value of all the assessment questions reported into one row. And doing it by section allows you to separate questions into separate sections. So depending on what type of assessment that you're running, you may want to separate into different categories and have those section totals separated by categories as well. So you can also set the structure type by individual or household. So if I'm in a household of 5 people, if I set the structure type by household, if I take the assessment, then no one else in my household can take that same assessment. If I do it by individual, then that means someone else can take their own assessment. Save your changes. And now it's time to create the assessment. So you can set up the questions. You click on new question. The same questions in the survey feature are available in the assessment feature. So they include single choice, choosing one option out of many, multiple choice, choosing all that apply, rating scale, setting the minimum and maximum and the increments, Likert scale, standard strongly agree to strongly disagree, simple text, which would a one-line response, multi-line text, including a paragraph, an F for a paragraph, and then yes or no. For certain options or certain questions, like the ability to choose from different options, there's an allow not applicable. The reason why it's up here and not able to be just entered as a label or a value is that this way it will not be affected in your reports. By choosing not applicable, an automatic NA option will show up for this question, but when reporting by the average response or the average value per question or for the entire assessment, if someone selected the not applicable, this question would not be included when recording the average. For value, you have to put an actual digit or number in, and then label would be the actual option that is available. Headers are available directly in the assessment. So if you would like to create a header, again, it's like a section. So if you'd like to title the section and separate them by section A, B, C, or by personal, financial, or professional, depending on what the assessment is, you can do that. So you would save your changes. And then you have the ability to add as many questions as apply. You can also click on reorder to reorder your questions if you like them in a different order, and then you would save your changes. And then this is where the headers list could appear. So when you do want to add a header or headers for a different question, you would select or enter the header names there, save your changes, and then when I return to my assessment, if I were ever to create a question that needed a header, your header options would be listed here. That way you can separate your questions into different headers. So now that I've done my assessment, I've created it, I'll return to the list. So in this assessment list, you'll go to Return to Assessment Manager. For the assessment configuration list, you'll see a bunch of assessments listed. That will be the created date, when it was last updated, the structure, the name of the assessment, the structure type, if it was household or individual, if it's locked, and the amount of questions. If it's locked, it means has anybody responded to this assessment yet? Has anyone taken the assessment? If the answer is yes, then that means that the questions and the assessment can no longer be changed, as it would affect the data of the reports coming out. If it says no, nobody's taken the assessment yet, so you can continue to edit and tweak it as you need. Next would be the framework configuration. This is where you set up the framework as to who should be taking these assessments. So new framework and how often it should be taken. By default, it will be unlimited assessments every 30 days. So a monthly assessment, but unchecking it, you can set more specific time ranges. So here, there's a certain number, a fixed number of assessments, and then it will give you, depending on what you've chosen, a drop-down list of the assessment numbers and the days between that you can specify. So between assessment 1 and 2, there are 30 days. Between 2 and 3, 30 days. 3 and 4, 30 days, etc. So the reason why this is available is if between a certain number of assessments that the days could be fewer or more, you could make the specific change. Otherwise, you can set it as unlimited and just by default within 30 days. One of the examples here is daily, which means if you check it out here, 1 day between assessments. So if I take one today, I can take one tomorrow. Go back to the assessment manager, and we've done the configuration, and now it's time to run the assessment. So you would set up your run. We have a new run here. Select your assessment from the list and your framework. So we'll do a daily one. And then you have the options to set exceptions. Do you want the assessment period to be allowed to be extended? Should I be able to do an assessment for someone if it's been more than 30 days? Well, how many days after 30 should that be possible? And how many times should it be possible? There's also the option of early submission. Should be able to do it before 30 days is up. And how many days before? Should an assessment be allowed to be canceled? So if you're doing it monthly, if I do one in January and I end up not coming in February, should the next one done be my February as in like my second assessment, or should it be counted as my third with the second one skipped? So yes or no. You can set the start date, an end date, or it could be no end date, it could be infinite, and which organizations should this be run for and be visible for. So when a user logs into which of these organizations should this assessment be shown on the Assess tab. Save your changes. So I've created the assessment and it's been completed. Keep in mind that I am logged into the network organization. So this is a network assessment, and I was able to check off the organizations to assign this assessment to. If I was logged into an agency, I would only see the agency's assessments. So under administration and assessments, it would be a different list. There's only one assessment here, only one framework, and different runs. So it's different because an agency might want to do their own set of assessments. So to see how it looks in a client profile, you would go to the Access a Client's Profile, search for it as usual, and then you'll see the Assess tab. On the top, there will be a blue banner if there are any assessments that have already been taken and are due, they would be listed here. And you can click on the hyperlinked Take Assessment Now, where the system will take you to that assessment. And you'll be able to perform it immediately. If it's a new one, you'd click on New Assessment and select it or search for it. And do you want to take an assessment? So there's the prompt there for my assessment. You can schedule it so if the person says not today, but I do want to do it the next time I come in or next week. You can schedule it for another date or take it now. So here's an assessment, my introduction, here's the question, and then I can save. The system will show you a page of the total amount of points based on the total of questions and what was highlighted. If you need to go back and edit any of the answers, you can go and do so. By clicking on complete, you're telling the system that you understand that by confirming this, you're not able to make any changes. So click on confirm. The assessment has been completed. If I scroll down to the bottom of the page, I'll see my assessment, the most recently completed one at the bottom. It's in red because I have no overdue assessments. I've completed one and one is upcoming. So since it's a daily one, my second one is due tomorrow. It's an individual-based assessment. The individual is myself, and this tomorrow one is pending. I can always go back and view the assessment that was taken by clicking on the dark blue button, and it will review my responses here. If for any case that the user forgets about the assessment or anything, when they go to the services page, that same banner about assessments that are due will be listed at the top of the page. So they would see it first before even scrolling to recorded visit. Keep in mind that even to see this, the user does need the assess role or the assessor role in order to see the blue banner to perform the assessments. Next would be reports. So if you go to reports, new report, we have 2 assessment reports. One would be answer frequencies, and then the next one is changes over time. So click on new report. We'll report on the one that was done today. So test. Just like the rest of the reports in the link to feed intake system, they're all the same where you can schedule it and set certain dates if you'd like. I'll do today for following organizations. And then at the bottom, you would select your assessment. Now, keep in mind, again, since this is a network assessment that I had performed, you have to go to the network organization to run your assessment report. This is the system when running this report and setting it up for you is only going to list for me the assessments that were created for this agency. So I will go to the network and run it again. Reports, new report, assessment, answer frequencies, test, today's date, organizations, and here's my most recent one, 2020, create report. You'll be brought to the report inbox page where your report will be queued. So once it's been queued, you would refresh your page again to see the completed report. Click on the dark blue button to view your report, and your assessment will be broken down into these questions. So here's the frequencies, and here's my question, the title, the answers, and in brackets, the point values for each one of them, as well as the not applicable option if anyone selected it. I only did one assessment in this case, but if there were several assessments taken, there would be several different columns for those separate assessments. So assessment 2, 3, 4, etc. For this table, you can, if there are several assessments, you could use enable scrolling to scroll across the table. And then there's also a tools option where you can copy, download a CSV, save as a PDF, or print. You could also print the entire assessment, all the questions as well. The second report is this changes over time report. So new report, do a test one, put the time range, organizations, and then create report. You'll be sent to the report inbox where your report will be queued. You would then refresh your page. Click on the dark blue icon to view the report. And you'll see a table with the breakdown of assessment scores by section. So in this case, by section, in this example, this assessment has been broken down into 5 sections. If it was an assessment where they wanted the full total and didn't want it broken down into sections, there would only be 1 row for the totals. In this area, the different columns represent the assessments. So in this case, 1 assessment was taken. If there were more than 1, they would continue to be assessment 2, 3, 4, etc., with the most recent assessment and final assessment columns at the end. Most recent would represent the most recent assessment done within this time period, and final assessment only represents an actual assessment marked as final. These totals represent the average scores of the values within each section. So if each response, of all the responses within section 1 that have been taken, and all of them that were just the first assessment, so all clients' first assessment taken in the section 1 section, this is the average response. This is the 2.67 is the average response for all first assessments in the section 2. And remember, it's for this specific assessment, so not all assessments, but for this specific assessment, in that section, this was the average response in the first time the clients took the assessment. And then there's a total row at the bottom. Like all the tables in our reports, you can click on Tools to copy, download as a CSV, save as a PDF, or print, or you can print the entire page. Next is the export feature. So under administration, you have exports, and then you can click on new export, and then there's assessment export. Click on create export, agree to the disclaimer, and then select the date range of the export that you'd like to run. This export is similar to the visit export, except it just includes the assessment answers. So under organization, and you would select the specific assessment that you'd like to get the export for. So this would represent this client information is for the clients who took this assessment. Their details, all the client details, including any address information, any commodity information, and then by default, all of the assessment options are checked off. The name of the assessment, the structure type, the number, and the responses. And then there's household and visit information as well as household members. Once that's been selected, you would click on export. Your export would be queued just like reports and refresh the page. Once the check mark has turned green, you can click on the dark blue icon to download the export. So you can download the CSV, the XLSX file, both opened in Excel or both in the zip file. Download the CSV and you can open it and view the responses. So here's my single choice, the visit date as usual, and then the client's information, and then the information about the assessment. And then any other information, I decided to check off the household information, which is why it's listed also at the end. And that's the assessment feature.